My girlfriend dumped me because I was too broke. 6 months later, she walked into my office asking for a job. And the day Emily left me, she didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She simply looked around my tiny apartment, sighed, and said something else. I can't keep waiting for you to become successful. I honestly thought she was joking. What? She crossed her arms. We're almost 30. I want stability. I want some. I stared at her. We've been together for 4 years. I know. And I don't think we're heading in the same direction anymore. That apartment wasn't much. 1 bedroom. Old furniture. A tiny kitchen. The air conditioner barely worked. But it was home. I'd spent 2 years saving enough money juice. Every paycheck mattered. Every dollar had a purpose. Emily knew that. She also knew something else. I had turned down a higher-paying job 6 months earlier. Not because I couldn't get it, but because I was helping build a small startup with 2 friends. The salary wasn't great. Actually, it was terrible. But if the company succeeded, everything would change. Emily hated that idea. She called it gambling. I called it believing in something. I've supported you long enough, she said. I blinked. Supported me. She laughed. When was the last time we went on a real vacation? I stayed quiet. When was the last time you bought me flowers? Silence. When was the last time we went somewhere expensive? I looked at her. I've been working 60 hours a week. For us. She shook her head. No. For your dream. Then she picked up her suitcase. I deserve someone who's already successful. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply asked one question. So, if I suddenly became successful tomorrow, would you stay? She smiled. A cold smile. That's never going to happen. Then she walked out, closing the door behind her. Just like that. 4 years. Gone in less than 5 minutes. The next few weeks were brutal. I threw myself into work. 12-hour days became normal. Sometimes 14. Our startup was struggling. Investors kept saying no. Servers crashed. Clients canceled. There were mornings I questioned everything. Maybe Emily had been right. Maybe I had made a mistake. Then, everything changed. One Tuesday afternoon, our biggest competitor announced they were shutting down. Almost overnight, their clients started calling us. 1 contract became 5. 5 became 20. Within 2 months, we hired 15 new employees. Then 30. Then 60. Our tiny office wasn't big enough anymore. For the first time, we weren't trying to survive. We were growing. Vast. 3 months later, one of our investors offered to buy the company. We said no. Instead, he invested even more money. That decision changed my life. I wasn't rich overnight, but I was finally financially secure. The same dream everyone had laughed at was suddenly becoming reality. One morning, my business partner, Chris, walked into my office holding a stack of resumes. We need another operations manager. I nodded. Any good candidates? One stands out. He placed a resume on my desk. I looked at the name and completely froze. Emily Carter. My ex-girlfriend. The woman who left because I was too broke. Chris smiled. Interviews tomorrow morning. I couldn't stop staring at the resume. Then I noticed something else. Under current employment, it simply said, laid off 2 weeks ago. And suddenly, I had a feeling tomorrow was going to be very interesting. The resume stayed on my desk long after Chris left. Emily Carter. 4 years together. 6 months apart. And now, she was applying for a job at the company she'd once called a waste of time. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because life had a strange sense of humor. Chris leaned back against the doorframe. You know her. I looked up. We used to date. His eyebrows shot up. Seriously. For 4 years. He whistled. Well, that makes tomorrow awkward. I shrugged. Not really. You sure? I'll treat her like every other applicant. He studied my face for a moment. I know you. Don't make this personal. I won't. And I meant it. Whatever happened between Emily and me. This interview wasn't about revenge. It was about hiring the right person. That night, I barely thought about her. I had quarterly reports to finish. A meeting with investors. 3 new client proposals. 6 months earlier. I would have spent hours wondering if I'd ever see Emily again. Now, I was too busy running a company she'd never believed in. The next morning, I arrived early. By 9 o'clock, the waiting area was already filling with applicants. Our company had grown fast. People actually wanted to work here now. That still felt surreal. The receptionist knocked on my office door. Your first interview is here. Send them in. An older gentleman walked inside. The interview lasted 20 minutes. Strong candidate. Professional. Confident. After him came 2 more applicants. Then another. Everything was going smoothly. Around 11. There was another knock. Chris peeked inside. You ready? I nodded. He smiled. This one's yours. I didn't answer. He opened the door. Emily, you can come in now. The second she stepped through the doorway, she smiled automatically. The kind of polite smile people give strangers. Then she looked up and froze. Her entire body went still. The smile disappeared instantly. Daniel. I calmly stood. Good morning. She stared at me. What? What are you doing here? I gestured toward the chair across my desk. I'm conducting interviews. She looked around the office. The glass walls. The company logo. The framed awards. Then back at me. Her voice became almost a whisper. You work here. I do. She swallowed. I didn't know. I figured. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, I smiled politely. Would you like to sit down? She slowly lowered herself into the chair. She still looked completely shocked. I thought. You thought what? She hesitated. I heard the founders were interviewing candidates. They are. I just didn't realize. She looked directly at me. You were one of them. I opened her resume. Let's keep this professional. She nodded quickly. Of course. I appreciated that. No awkward apology. No emotional speech. Just professional. Exactly what I wanted. So, I glanced at the resume. You worked at Morgan Financial for almost 3 years. Yes. What happened? There were layoffs. Were you one of many? She nodded. Almost 40 people. I made a note. Why do you want to join our company? She smiled nervously. I've heard amazing things. Our growth. Our culture. The opportunities. I couldn't help noticing something. 6 months ago, she'd called this company a terrible idea. Now, she was praising it. Halfway through the interview, she suddenly stopped talking. Can I ask you something? Sure. When? When did all this happen? I knew exactly what she meant. The company. She nodded. A few months after you left. Her eyes drifted around the office again. I had no idea. I know. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. Finally, she asked the question I'd been expecting. So, I guess your startup worked out. It did. She forced a smile. I'm happy for you. For some reason. That sentence sounded honest. Not forced. Not jealous. Just honest. The interview continued for another 15 minutes. When it was over, I closed her resume. Thank you for coming. She stood. So, when will I know? We'll contact all candidates by Friday. She nodded. Okay. She started walking toward the door. Then stopped. Without turning around. She quietly said, I'm sorry. I looked at her. For what? She finally turned to face me. For not believing in you. Before I could answer, someone suddenly burst into my office. It was Chris. His face had gone completely pale. Daniel, you need to come downstairs. Right now. Something in his voice told me this wasn't about business. And whatever had just happened was about to change everything again. Chris almost never interrupted interviews. If he did, something was seriously wrong. I stood up immediately. Excuse us for a moment. Emily nodded. Of course. The second we stepped into the hallway, I asked, what happened? Chris lowered his voice. One of our biggest clients is downstairs. So, they're refusing to sign the contract. I frowned. Why? They said someone from our company promised them completely different pricing. Who? That's the problem. They won't tell me. I followed Chris downstairs. Our conference room was packed. 3 executives sat on one side of the table. Their expressions weren't just frustrated. They were furious. One of them immediately stood up. So, are you Daniel? I am. I'm Michael. We've got a serious problem. I nodded. I'm listening. He slid a printed email across the table. This came from someone claiming to represent your company. I looked at it. The sender's email address wasn't ours. But it looked almost identical. One missing letter. At first glance. Almost impossible to notice. The fake email promised impossible discounts. Free upgrades. Priority support. Things we'd never agreed to. Michael folded his arms. If this is how your company does business, we're done. I shook my head. That's not us. Can you prove it? I looked at Chris. Call it. Now. 20 minutes later, our IT manager walked in carrying a laptop. He examined every email, every header, every domain. Finally, he looked up. These messages didn't come from us. Michael frowned. So who sent them? The IT manager zoomed in on the email address. They registered a fake domain yesterday. Chris sighed. Someone's impersonating us. Silence filled the room. Michael leaned back. Why would anyone do that? I already had a guess. Our competitors. They'd lost dozens of clients to us over the past few months. Destroying our reputation would have been cheaper than winning them back. The IT manager suddenly smiled. I think I found something. He pointed at the screen. The fake sender logged into the account only once. From where? He typed for another minute, then stopped. His expression changed. That strain. What? The IP address. It belongs to a carking office. Chris frowned. Lots of companies use those. The IT manager nodded. Yeah. But this one. He turned the screen toward us. Is across the street. Michael laughed. So whoever did this is practically watching your office. I looked through the conference room window. Across the street, a modern glass building overlooked ours. Dozens of people worked there. Anyone could have been responsible. After another half hour, the misunderstanding was cleared up. Michael shook my hand. I owe you an apology. No apology needed. We've all seen scams before. He smiled. I'm actually impressed. You handled this professionally. He picked up the contract. Let's sign. Just like that. The biggest deal in company history was back on track. As everyone left the room, Chris nudged my shoulder. Not bad. I smiled. We got lucky. No. He looked at me seriously. We hired the right founder. That meant more than he probably realized. I walked back upstairs. Emily was still sitting outside my office. She immediately stood. I wasn't sure if I should leave. You didn't have to wait. I know. I wanted to. I unlocked my office. Come in. She sat down again. I heard people running around. Everything okay? Now it is. She smiled. You always stayed calm under pressure. I laughed. You remember that. You think I forgot 4 years. For the first time, the conversation didn't feel awkward. It almost felt normal. She looked around my office again. I really am happy for you. You built all of this. It wasn't just me. She nodded. But you believed in it. Then she quietly added, I should have believed in you too. Before I could answer, the receptionist knocked again. Sorry to interrupt. What is it? She looked confused. There's a man downstairs asking for Emily. Emily frowned. For me? He says he's your boyfriend. The room instantly went silent. Emily slowly turned toward me. Then quietly said, I don't have a boyfriend. Emily looked genuinely confused. I don't have a boyfriend. The receptionist frowned. He specifically asked for Emily Carter. Emily stood up. There has to be some mistake. I'll come with you, I said. She hesitated. You don't have to. I know. But something about this doesn't feel right. The three of us walked downstairs. The lobby was almost empty. Near the entrance stood a man in an expensive gray suit. Mid-30s. Perfectly styled hair. Luxury watch. The kind of person who looked like he wanted everyone to notice how successful he was. The second he saw Emily, he smiled. There you are. Emily stopped walking. Ryan. He spread his arms. I've been calling you all morning. She looked completely confused. I blocked your number. That wasn't the answer I'd expected. Ryan laughed. So that's how we're doing this. Emily folded her arms. I told you we're done. He glanced at me. So, this is him. Emily's expression hardened. Leave him out of this. Ryan looked me up and down. I knew she'd come crawling back. Emily took a step forward. I am not with Daniel. Ryan smirked. Not yet. The entire lobby had gone quiet. Several employees were pretending not to watch. Ryan didn't seem to care. He pulled a folded newspaper out of his briefcase. On the front page, there was a photo of our office building and a headline about our company's rapid growth. He pointed at it. So, now you suddenly want him again. Emily stared at the newspaper, then looked back at him. You actually think that's why I'm here? What else am I supposed to think? You dumped me the day your ex became successful. She blinked. As you knew. He laughed. Everyone knows. I finally spoke. I'm sorry. Who exactly are you? Ryan extended his hand. Ryan Mitchell. Emily interrupted immediately. Don't. I looked at her. He was my manager. Were. She nodded. At my last job. Ryan smiled. And for about 4 months. We dated. Emily rolled her eyes. No. We had dinner twice. You kept telling people we were together. The lobby suddenly made a lot more sense. Ryan wasn't her boyfriend. He wanted everyone to believe he had been. Emily sighed. I ended it because he wouldn't stop showing up outside my apartment. Chris quietly whispered. Seriously? Emily nodded. I reported him to HR. Ryan laughed again. And 2 weeks later, they laid you off. Emily looked furious. They laid off 40 people. You weren't special. Ryan shrugged. Believe whatever helps you sleep. I stepped between them. I think it's time for you to leave. Ryan looked at me. And who are you? I smiled politely. The person who can have security escort you outside. His smile disappeared. For a second, I thought he was going to argue. Instead, he reached into his briefcase again, pulled out a folder, and tossed it onto the reception desk. Fine. But before I go, you should probably read that. Emily frowned. What is it? Ryan looked directly at me. It's everything she never told you. Without another word. He walked out of the building. Nobody moved. The lobby doors slowly closed behind him. Emily stared at the folder like it might explode. Her hands were shaking. I looked at her. Do you know what's inside? She swallowed. I think I do. Chris glanced between us. Should I leave? Emily slowly nodded. Probably. Within seconds. The lobby was almost empty. Just the two of us. And the folder. Emily reached for it. Then suddenly pulled her hand back. I can't. I frowned. Why? She looked down at the floor. Because if that's what I think it is, you're going to hate me. I slowly opened the folder. Inside were dozens of printed emails. Performance reviews. Internal messages. And one document clipped neatly on top. The title immediately caught my attention. Employee Recommendation Letter. Signed. By Emily. Addressed to another company. Dated. 3 days before she broke up with me. My eyes moved to the first sentence. I'm relocating because my boyfriend has no ambition, and I don't see a future with him. I felt my chest tighten. But that wasn't even the worst part. Because underneath that letter was another document with my name on it. And I had absolutely no idea how she had gotten it. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The lobby. The employees walking past. The phones ringing. None of it mattered. I kept staring at the document with my name on it. Emily, what is this? She covered her face. I never wanted you to see it. I slowly pulled the paper out of the folder. It was a recommendation request. For me. Except, I had never applied for the job. The document listed my name, my email, my previous work experience, even my phone number. Someone had tried to submit my resume to another company without telling me. At the bottom, there was a handwritten note. Candidate declined to continue after discussion with partner. I looked up. What does this mean? Emily couldn't look me in the eyes. It was 2 years ago. 2 years earlier. I'd received a strange phone call. A recruiter asked whether I was still interested in a management position. I told them they had the wrong person. I assumed it was spam. Apparently, it wasn't. You applied for me. Emily nodded. I thought you'd be happier. I frowned. You never told me. I wanted it to be a surprise. A surprise. She swallowed. When they called, I panicked. What? I realized you'd probably accept. I stared at her. It paid almost twice what you were making. I know. So why stop it? Tears filled her eyes. Because it was in another state. The room suddenly felt very quiet. You told them. I wasn't interested. She nodded. I told them we decided to stay. Wait. She looked down. I made the decision. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You made a career decision. For me. I thought it was best for us. You didn't even ask me. I was scared. There it is again. She looked confused. What? I was scared. Every decision you've told me about today. You made because you were scared. She didn't answer. Because she knew I was right. I looked back at the folder. There were more emails. One immediately caught my attention. The sender was Ryan. The subject line read, regarding Daniel. I opened it. Ryan had written to Emily nearly a year earlier. Don't make the same mistake twice. If someone has potential, don't leave before they succeed. I frowned. Ryan had actually defended me. Emily noticed my expression. He wasn't always like this. What do you mean? He became obsessed after we broke up. But when we worked together, he actually respected you. I raised an eyebrow. He didn't even know me. He knew your resume. My resume. She nodded. I showed him. You what? Emily immediately regretted saying it. I shouldn't have. You showed my resume to your boss. I wanted career advice. Without asking me. She quietly whispered. Oh, yes. Everything suddenly clicked. Ryan already knew my name. He knew my work history. He knew where I worked. That's why he'd recognized me the moment he walked into our lobby. It had never been a coincidence. I closed the folder. Emily, I need you to answer one question. She nodded. Honestly. Okay. Have you ever made another decision about my life? Without telling me. She stood completely still. Her silence lasted almost 10 seconds. Then, very quietly, yes. I felt my stomach drop. What was it? She took a deep breath. The startup. What about it? She closed her eyes. I almost convinced your biggest investor. And not to meet with you. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. What did you just say? For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I almost convinced your biggest investor. And not to meet with you. I stared at Emily. Explain. Immediately. She wiped her eyes. You remember the investor meeting that got canceled last year? I nodded. It wasn't canceled. What? He was still willing to meet. I I asked his assistant to postpone it. I felt my chest tighten. You what? I told her there had been a family emergency. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You pretended to be me. No. I pretended to be your girlfriend. Why? She covered her face. Because I didn't want you risking everything. You'd already quit your stable job. You were working crazy hours. I thought, if that meeting failed, you'd finally give up on the startup. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. So your solution was to sabotage me. I thought I was protecting us. There was never an us in that decision. I leaned against the reception desk, trying to process everything. You kept saying you left because I wasn't successful. She nodded. But before that, you actually stopped me from becoming successful. Tears rolled down her face. I know. I've regretted it every day. I looked at the folder again. Ryan had included one final email. It wasn't from Emily. It was from the investor's assistant. The date matched exactly. The email read, Daniel, we tried reaching you several times after the meeting was canceled. Unfortunately, we never heard back. Best of luck with your future projects. I had never received it. Because it had been sent to the address Emily had provided. Not mine. I slowly folded the papers. You know what's crazy? Emily looked up. What? If you hadn't done that, we probably would have succeeded even earlier. She nodded silently. I'm sorry. I know. No. I mean it. I know. For the first time all day. I believed her. She looked around the lobby. I don't expect another chance. You shouldn't. I needed you to know the truth. I nodded. I'm glad I finally do. A week later, we finished interviewing every candidate. Chris walked into my office carrying the final evaluations. So, what do you think? I handed him my notes. Emily's resume was solid. Her interview had been professional. But another candidate had more experience. Chris looked through the files. So, we're hiring Melissa. I smiled. Yeah. The best candidate gets the job. No exceptions. Chris nodded. I figured that's what you'd say. Later that afternoon, I sent Emily a short email. Thank you for your time. We decided to move forward with another candidate. I genuinely wish you the best in your career. She replied less than 10 minutes later. I understand. Thank you for giving me a fair interview. That was it. No arguments. No guilt. No second chances. Just closure. About 3 months later, our company held a celebration for reaching 100 employees. As everyone gathered for a group photo, Chris walked over and smiled. You know. What? If Emily hadn't walked away, this company might not exist. I looked around the office. The people laughing together. The team we'd built from nothing. The dream everyone had doubted. Then I quietly answered. Maybe. But if she had believed in me, I would have built it even faster. Looking back, people often assume the hardest part was being dumped because I wasn't rich. It wasn't. The hardest part was discovering that someone who claimed to love me had quietly made decisions about my future without ever asking me. Love isn't choosing someone else's path for them. It isn't controlling their opportunities. And it definitely isn't giving up on them the moment life gets difficult. Emily thought she left because I wasn't successful. The truth was, she left because she stopped believing before the story was over. I didn't become successful to prove her wrong. I became successful because I never stopped believing in myself. And sometimes, that's the only approval you'll ever need.